season. We know she was dealing with a lot coming off Iowa national championship game, entering the WNBA. Big time transition. I understand that, but we also have to hold these WNBA referees accountable because they played a big factor in the assault Caitlin Clark took for the 2024 season because they did not call a bunch of calls that should have been fouls, bro.
The WNBA is facing a significant refereeing issue, and Caitlin Clark's rookie season served as the catalyst for this controversy. I'm going to show you video that will fundamentally alter your perspective of her league struggles, from dubious technicals to missed calls on obvious contact. This pattern is unsettling, and it matters because no matter how much Indiana's front office improves, whether through coaching changes or better free agents, nothing will change if the officiating remains the same.
Now we know the Indiana Fever front office did everything they had to do, put the right pieces around Caitlin Clark, make sure they make it far in the playoffs, and possibly get a WNBA championship.
Clark's situation isn't only about her. It's also exposing more serious problems that could influence the WNBA Prim's future.
Prime example, what really made me start thinking about this was the DJ Currington situation. They didn't call nothing on that for her poking Caitlin Clark in the eye, and that really had me thinking, like, damn, how many times did they actually, drop the ball and didn't call stuff against Caitlin?
When Caitlin Clark joined the WNBA, viewership skyrocketed, and we're talking record numbers overall. But while everyone was watching Clark, something strange was happening with the way the games were being officiated. Have you ever watched a basketball game and felt like the referees were specifically targeting one player? I have the receipts to prove it.
Caitlin got called for a technical for hitting the back of the backboard. If somebody viciously clotheslined her, we're not getting a call for that. And I just wondered if they would have done it a little different, just start calling stuff for people assaulting Caitlin Clark, that would have kind of minimized the pressure and minimized the assault I believe she would have took for the 2024 season. And going into this new season, once again, they're held responsible, bro.
The narrative.
Oversimplifying what actually transpired, the narrative surrounding Clark's debut season was on her acclimating to the physicality of the professional game. Referees frequently disregarded obvious fouls. She was pushed on jumpers, hammered on drives, and knocked off the ball. Recall the offensive foul call against Seattle on June 13th, when Clark made a routine dribble move, but the whistle blew. The commentators were perplexed, saying, "I don't see the foul there," because the replay showed little contact.
Second personal. Let's take a look.
I think we ought to be able to see it from this angle. I don't see how that's an offensive foul to me.
Now, that was called an offensive foul on Caitlin Clark. Do we all remember that play? How is that an offensive foul, bro? How, remotely, is this right here an offensive foul, dog? How? Like, I'm just not getting that. But that was the call that was put on Caitlin Clark.
Seeing her season felt like seeing a biased umpire in a rigged game. Watching the video makes it impossible to dismiss that Clark's refereeing was different. This wasn't an isolated event, either. It was a pattern. AA. While Clark performed the same actions and was given a foul call, Wilson and Breanna Stewart did the same and received positive calls.
I'm not letting up on them damn WNBA referees because they are the biggest haters when it comes to Caitlin Clark, bro. I know we got haters everywhere, but nobody is worse than these WNBA referees.
Defenders protected Clark in a different way because they knew they could get away with making more contact. They repeatedly checked her by hand, pushed her on drives, and entered her landing area on jumpers without getting in trouble.
Unnecessary. Kennedy Carter.
Seattle, and all of a sudden,
We're pretty close. This has been as close as it's been all second quarter long. 44.
Clark.
With her offensive workload averaging only 3.7 free throws per game, Clark's usage rate and driving frequency should have led to a lot more free throw attempts. It's ridiculous that other rookies with comparable styles reached the line almost twice as frequently, while Clark missed dozens of free throw opportunities that should have been hers.
Because there was also a stat that came out a few weeks ago that said Caitlin Clark received 17% of the WNBA's flagrant fouls this season, and 80% of those flagrant fouls were committed by the Chicago Sky against Caitlin Clark.
The effect extended beyond the numbers. As the season progressed, it became worse when defenders realized they could get away with extra contact and continued to target her with no repercussions. It's difficult enough to adjust to a faster, stronger league without realizing the referees are using a different set of rules for you. It throws off your confidence, decision-making, and rhythm.
But when you have the face of your league getting nearly 20% of all flagrant fouls called against her, that is an issue. And that's not just an issue that the players have to work out. That is from top down. That goes to the commissioner level. Like, that is the level that needs to control these kinds of things.
The targeting of Caitlin Clark quickly escalated from bad to dangerous, and I'm not making this up. There is video that shows Clark being completely flattened as he goes to the rim without the referees sounding a whistle. Take a look at this to see how that is even feasible in professional basketball.
Up out again. She's coming down the court. Bow. It looked like Morena did that to her, bro. But that's what I'm talking about.
While you're watching the games in one shocking game, Clark was playing by a completely different set of rules than everyone else. She drove toward the basket and got completely leveled, and you could hear the commentators shouting in shock that it was a foul right away, but the referees just stood there, silent as if nothing had happened.
Pick up Caitlin Clark from the second she touches the basketball. That's what Burton did there. All over Caitlin. Wow.
This started to become an unsettling trend. It was like watching someone walk a tight RPP with the safety net purposefully removed when Clark was knocked down 3 different times in a single game without a single whistle. Every fan watching at home could see it happen in front of their eyes, leaving them yelling at their screens in exasperation.
A tag on his page stated, "This has been pretty much the whole game. No call fouls for Caitlin Clark. The WNBA and their officials now know how to screw up a good thing."
The whole story is told by the contrast between the player's defense of Clark and that of other guards. For instance, MRE's defensive strategies against other players and her defense of Clark were completely different. She soon realized that she could get away with much more physical contact against Clark without facing any repercussions from officials, keeping in mind the DJ Carrington incident.
You can see Caitlin comes off a screen here. She dribbles back to her right hand, and then she's going for the pass to Aaliyah Boston when Dejanay jumps up, seemingly looking to try to steal the ball, and then hits her in the face. Caitlin is on the ground, the ball goes in the opposite direction, and the Connecticut Suns score. The internet doing what the internet does, they found a second angle to this play, and this is where a lot of fans were saying that this was intentional. It's in slow motion, as you can see here. Dejanay is going up for the ball, she misses, and then her hand bends down like this and goes straight into Caitlin's eye.
The situation became so clear that even former WNBA officials spoke up. One former referee said that the officiating standard for Clark was noticeably different compared to other players. This testimony comes from someone who knows the rule book inside and out, not just irate fans. Clark was directly poked in the eye, which was a dangerous action and definitely a foul by any standard, but the referees swallowed their whistles and didn't even review the play. Meanwhile, another player was called for barely brushing an opponent's arm.
Back on this one said, how can the WNBA justify these referees? Caitlin Clark gets blatantly fouled twice, no call. I guess that's the playoffs, but these are bad.
Not only were there missed calls, but there was a trend that endangered Clark's safety as each transgression went unpunished. When referees fail to protect the player, physical play automatically intensifies what starts as extra contact and quickly turns into dangerous plays that have no place in basketball. Defenders also made some of these plays more like football tackles than basketball defense. In addition to playing tough defense, Clark also faced the possibility of getting hurt as the referee watched game after game.
You need to protect your superstars, and the WNBA has not done well this entire season of protecting their one superstar who brought in more eyeballs than anyone else has ever done in the league. She should have a special whistle. Calls like this should be made, should be reviewed. People should know right off the bat, it shouldn't be the first round of the playoffs that players think that they can still do this kind of thing to Caitlin Clark, to Angel Reese.
This is about providing Clark with the same protection that every player receives, not about giving him preferential treatment. Basketball is a physically demanding sport, but the risky moves Clark faced with no official protection varied greatly from physical defense.
Calling some of these fouls and not cracking down on some of these cheap shots and hard fouls that are so excessive, not only against Caitlin Clark, but against other players as well. You see compilations of them online. Not cracking down on these are going to turn people off to watching the WNBA, and it's not going to allow the league to grow and people to be more excited in players other than Caitlin Clark.
Every player should receive fair officiating, but when we examine what transpired with Dananna Boner, it becomes evident that Clark wasn't even receiving that much. Have you ever witnessed a shooting foul so flagrantly disregarded while commentators were shouting about it in real time? The push was so obvious that you have to wonder what a player would actually have to do to get whistled. And this was the smoking gun that revealed everything.
It's Clark, 3 to shoot. Gonna have to hoist from the logo. Air ball. And Clark wanted a foul. Felt like Bonner ran into her. But a shot clock violation. Now Bonner and Clark get into it.
Oh, this is what the people was talking about with DeWanna Bonner.
It should have been an automatic safeguard when Bonner shoved Clark on her three-point shot, entering her landing spot and making contact. Not only was it incompetent of officials to overlook this call, but it was also the ideal example of the double standard Clark encountered throughout the season. Shooters is a fundamental rule in basketball, a safety measure specifically implemented to prevent career-threatening injuries when players are at their most vulnerable.
No foul was called. It's Clark, 3 to shoot.
I forgot about this one.
The most annoying thing about the Boner incident is how frequently other players receive this exact foul penalty. The rules are very clear. Even though it's B-Ball 101 that a defender cannot approach a shooter's landing spot or make contact during the shooting motion, the whistle remained mute when it happened to Clark.
That's when Caitlin Clark got a tech, I think. Oh no, this was the flop. Yes, I remember this. This right here was the biggest flop ever. Yeah, she flopped on that when it got that.
Then came
After missing a shot, the moment that finally opened everyone's eyes arrived. After missing, the official promptly gave her a technical foul, stating that it was disrespectful to the game of basketball. Take a look, are you kidding me? What does it say about our sport when such a normal reaction is penalized? Clark hit the backboard out of frustration with herself, something that many players do. Others get away with much more than I do.
I got a technical for basically being mad at myself because I missed the three and then I went and hit the backboard. And he told me it was disrespectful to the game of basketball, so...
Since players with similar playing styles usually get to the line almost twice as frequently, the math simply doesn't add up unless you acknowledge the officiating bias. The video evidence shows that Clark averaged just 3.7 free throw attempts per game during her rookie season, which is shockingly low for a player with her usage rate and frequency of driving to the basket.
I don't know, it reminded me of the technical that I got in college where I said, damn it, where it's like a personal frustration. Had nothing to do with my team, had nothing to do with their reffing, had nothing to do with other team. It was just because I'm a competitor and I felt like I should have been making more shots, so... But I think he fired me up to continue to play a lot harder. I thought we got a lot better after he did that, so I want to thank him for...
The backboard technical and the Boner push are not isolated errors. Rather, they are part of a pattern that shows how differently Clark was officiated in comparison to her peers. It wasn't about learning to be respectful as a rookie or acclimating to physicality. Rather, it was about officials holding one of the league's biggest stars to an entirely different standard.
That's a technical for smacking the backboard. At the end of the day, the only problem the Fever have going into the 2025 season is the WNBA referees at this point. They got to be held accountable, and I will watch every move they make.
Let me tell you something. The Indiana Fever front office isn't playing around anymore. They've completely changed the organization by hiring a new coach and revamping their roster to create the ideal environment for Clark to flourish in her sophomore season. However, if the referees don't get their act together, all of these moves won't matter because the WNBA has rebuilt with purpose, addressing coaching, strengthening the supporting cast, and creating a system that maximizes Clark's talents. Before tipping off, what do you think the league should do to hold referees accountable? Will the league finally align its officiating with the brilliance on the court, or will this pattern continue? Clark's future and the league as a whole depends on fixing this.
Thing, you guys, and it might be controversial, but there has been a lot of talk about a special whistle that certain players in the WNBA get and some players don't. But I think that this is something, again, that we can compare to the NBA. Superstars are going to get a special whistle, and they should get a special whistle. Do you know why? Because at the end of the day, it's not just the sport, it's the entertainment of the sport, and you need to protect your superstars.
Let me